Welcome back to Rose Connections, and I'm so glad that you have been watching some of these fundamental videos that I've been doing. The first one was about radical reflections and sort of climbing your own mountain, knowing yourself and knowing the resources available to you. The second one was about relationship reboot and how we can reimagine what our relationships and human connections look like and how we show up in those human connections. And so today is going to be sort of that last piece of really what I view as this beautiful triad of leadership skills and explorations that all of us need to go through in order to be able to show up as leaders out in the real world. And this last one is about radiant resilience. We hear so much about resilience, and buckle up because we're probably going to end up hearing a lot more over the next few years due to a lot of the COVID trauma that I think we don't even know the full impact that that's going to have on us when this pandemic is officially over. And so we hear a lot about resilience. And so I wanted to provide a little bit of context of what I mean by resilience. Resilience is often applied, and it's a term that we use a lot when we're working with trauma, to talk about that ability of someone to pick themselves back up and move forward with that experience, not ignoring the experience, not pretending like it didn't happen or that it never existed, but having dealt with it and recognized the ways in which it impacted their lives, and they've made some peace with it, they've healed it to some extent, and they've been able to regain their strength in order to move forward with their lives. And when I talk about someone who has been through trauma, moving forward with their lives, again, I don't mean that they're abandoning the trauma or that they're abandoning the story, but they have transformed the story into something that has made them stronger and something that has given them extra skills and extra abilities and extra insight to be able to go out into the rest of the world. And the reason why resilience is such an important concept to know in leadership is so much of the leadership literature out there, so much of, I think, some of the popular mythology about leaders is that they're strong, they're stoic, they never show what they're actually feeling. How dare you show your employees that you're scared? Or those under your command, you have to buckle up and you've got to lead them, and you've got to be stronger than them. And so often, I think when we look at that strength, we forget that we cannot know strength without knowing vulnerability. That when we recognize and fully embrace our vulnerabilities, the areas of weakness, the tender spots in our lives, the pain and the loss and the grief and the anger and the injustice and all of those words that have brought us to where we are today, those experiences have made us stronger. And so many out there, specifically, I think in the new age or spirituality world, really, they want to sort of jumpstart that whole resilience process without the going through the thing and dealing with the thing process. And so that's really what I'm here to talk about is going through that process, because where the radical reflections is really knowing yourself, you're sitting with that vulnerability and you're understanding, God, what is that gut reaction that I'm having? And why am I overworking so much? And you start connecting that maybe that overwork is a response to trauma and is an indication that you are burned out or that you've been through a little too much and you need to sit and work through some stuff and really understand yourself after all these experiences or events. And it is when you're kind of on your way out the tunnel of that, the dark cave that you have to kind of burrow into to understand yourself and to understand how that trauma or how that history or how those belief systems impacted your relationships and impacted other experiences that you had. You start to recognize how that vulnerability can make you stronger. Because that vulnerability gives you an opportunity to connect with other people who have been through something similar to you. How often do you hear people say, so-and-so is my inspiration because, they went through this and I was going through that too at the same time. And I saw that it was possible. How often are we, especially as leaders, being designated as leaders because of the fact that we have gone through some really difficult, really extreme stuff and lived to tell the tale and lived to be a better person and lived to find success again, and all of those times that you fell down and you got back up again and you got back up with better lessons. What happens when we reach burnout is we don't have that energy replenishment to be able to get us to transform those vulnerabilities into strengths, because you need that time to allow those roots to really take hold, and especially the roots of new stories that we tell about ourselves or our encounters with others are pretty typical, that need a little bit of time, space, and nourishment in order to really be able to grow. And so as leaders, we're constantly challenged in those vulnerabilities. And I want to say that I remember being in some leadership conversations at one point, and they said, well, I can't ever let my employees know that I'm worried about what COVID's going to do to our organization. They need to know that I am decisive and I am, I'm ready to act. And that's great. They do need that assurance that you're ready to act, but they also need transparency. Transparency is such a fundamental core piece of trauma-informed care, of letting someone know what might be coming into their world that could impact their world, where they might have to plan a little bit. And, it doesn't mean that you reveal everything and that you overshare or that it's TMI all the time, too much information all the time. But what it does mean is that you're being candid, you're being transparent, you are giving them the information that is useful for them to know so that they can prepare themselves for whatever changes might be coming down the road. And I think that pressure that we put on ourselves when we are designated for leadership, when we rise to leadership, when we volunteer for leadership, is we feel that we have to be the most perfect version of ourselves in order to be able to lead. And yet some of the most effective people I know cannot fill out their own calendar to save their lives. Some of the most effective leaders I know, they aren't aiming for perfection. What they are aiming for is a mastery of being able to see the big picture and see all the different ways in which those things are interconnected. You see a theme going on with these videos here. I talk about interconnectedness a lot. And that's why resilience is so very, very important, because if we're acting from our own woundedness, because we refuse to engage in those vulnerabilities, we refuse to look at our, I dare say, our weaknesses and our faults, and we fail to really recognize that those are areas of opportunity for us to collaborate with other people who can make us stronger. Resilience is such a necessary component of building a good team, of being able to effectuate change, because you need to be coming from it from an authentic place. And the thing that used to drive me the most nuts in folks that I worked for or organizations that I saw was when the leader made themselves such a mystery to the people below them that they couldn't dare, talk about, when, they might have faced homelessness, 10 years ago. And so they understand the worry and frustration that you have in not knowing whether you're going to get a raise this year. those things matter, and recognizing that we all have stuff in our stories, and we all have stuff that we feel vulnerable about. And how many times have you seen a leader who just absolutely refuses to even admit that they didn't know something, or that they were wrong about something? And that in and of itself is probably one of the biggest lessons I know, for example, in the legal profession, that we have to face quite often, is how often we refuse to make ourselves vulnerable by saying, you know what, Your Honor, I did not know that. Thank you so much for telling me. Or, hey, opposing counsel, I'm very sorry that that happened. We then build up these, attack guns to protect ourselves from our own vulnerabilities and from admitting our own faults and our own failures and our own humanness. And so part of being radiantly resilient leaders, because there's resilience and then there's that radiance. And that radiance is about when you're really glowing from that heart center, when you really know yourself and and you're comfortable with who you are and how you show up and in your various leadership capacities and everyday capacities. When you understand who you are and how you can better relate and express yourself to others and listen to others, you also start recognizing and anticipating that all of us are going to have moments of weakness. All of us are going to have moments of a trauma reaction where we're activated, where we're a little hyper aware right now, or hyper vigilant, or hyper defensive. And that there's going to be such thing as human error. Sometimes people just forget. And one thing that we're going to have to start really dealing with, if we are going to talk about trauma-informed social change and trauma-informed society, is that in that trauma-informed world, trauma affects things like executive functioning, memory, and the ability to process certain bits of information, being able to hear something over the diagnosis of you have COVID. You might be told all the 20 ways in which it's treatable, but you're stuck there on that one sentence. So we need to start adapting and recognizing that the trauma reactions we ourselves have been facing in our various challenges out in the rest of the world is what other people are facing as well. The human error, the call back to childhood, shames that, folks still are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And when we're trauma informed and when we're working from that radiantly resilient place, we also start viewing accountability differently. I remember being in a meeting once where accountability was treated as, you're not doing your thing. How dare you not do your thing? And how shaming is that? And how debilitating and dismissive is that when you're not really even, you're just making excuses, is also, sort of this counter to this coin of accountability. Whereas, in fact, accountability is inviting someone in. It's not finger wagging at them. It's saying, hey, I noticed that, your report was late this month. And so, why don't we just come talk about it a little bit? And I want to find out what's going on so that I know what I'm holding you accountable for. Are my expectations too out there, or, completely against what your lived reality is in trying to produce this thing? It's giving someone that benefit of the doubt, as well as calling them back into alignment with that shared purpose or that shared goal of your group, of your family, of whatever it is you have been called to leadership over. And that even plays out even in our criminal justice system, and starting to look differently at how we view accountability. And I admit I have not been on the prison abolishment camp for very long, and it's something that I just recently came to. But for me, accountability is about recognizing, hey, we have some rules in society, and you broke those rules, and we are very curious and interested to know why that happened and what we can do together to help you come back into alignment with the rules that we feel we need to have as a society in order to function. You stepped outside of that, and so we want to understand more about that so that we can feel safe inviting you back in to be a part of that same flow. And that's a really out there concept, because I think so often we have been so trained to view punishment as the equality of justice, when in fact it is just one form of what justice could look like. So justice and accountability, and treating those things as acts of love, and saying, hey, I don't want you wandering off all out there by yourself. Come back over here. What's going on? Let's get you back into the fold. And yeah, we can have a much more robust conversation about that as a policy objective, and pros and cons, and what that could look like and what that doesn't look like. But as a matter of heart and leading from a place of accountability is about realignment. It's not about punishment. It's not about discipline. It's not about shaming someone for not meeting your expectations when maybe your expectations weren't reasonable to begin with. It's a coming back together. And then finally, I talked about transparency and how necessary it is for people to know what's coming at them. If you want people to not get into their trauma space, recognizing how you as a leader can be more transparent, how you as a leader can be more clear and concise. I need to work on the concise stuff, as you can tell from 16 minutes of video here. But it's also about being intentional. When you are operating from that heart-centered place, you are walking forward and saying, these are my intentions, and people can trust that those intentions are exactly what you're going to do. So, with all of that said, I want to wind this particular video down and remind you that I do have some specials that are happening this month. On a personal level, I do read tarot cards. I do some energy readings and chakra clearings and things like that I find has been very beneficial and very useful to me. To center myself and ground myself. So those are things that I'm going to start offering on the Rose Connections website, where you can book me directly that way. But for now, if you want to send me a direct message or an email to sign up for some introductory pricing for those tarot readings, let me know, and I will have information below for you on that. And likewise, at the start of the year, I am going to be offering some different packages when it comes to my leadership coaching and my training. So that's something for both organizations and individuals that they could sign up for if that's of interest to them. So if this is content that you enjoy, please comment, please like, please share, please click subscribe. Let people know about it. People in your organization, or if you see someone who's struggling in your organization, maybe something that I say can help them kind of resituate and reorient to how they really want to be. We're going to start getting into more substantive lessons about all of these different concepts that I'm talking about. But for right now, and especially during this holiday season, I want to wish you the best of radiance and the most authentic of your light that will shine. And I am here to celebrate you. I am here to support you. And please have a beautiful and wonderful holiday season, and I will catch you in the new year.